to our viewers. This is our first podcast or video for 2022. And the reason why we are having this, we've got a lot of clients that ask a lot of questions in terms of what are the professionals that we need to have for them to build a house or a building, type of buildings, 3-story buildings or industrial buildings. So the reason why we're having this podcast is just to give you value or give information to you so that you know what you need to do when you want to build a house or any other building structure that is related to built environment. And to start this conversation, we thought of introducing one of our, I can't say clients, but it's one of our partners that we work with in the built environment, and Lincoln. And you have been working in the built environment for quite a long time under the company, The Facilitators, based in Centurion. And I know you've been working with a lot of contractors, clients for several years. If you can introduce yourself and talk more about your company.
All right, thanks, Innocent. So my name is Lincoln Christoph. As Innocent said, our company is called The Facilitators, and that's what we do. We facilitate between many different parties in the built environment or in the building industry to make sure that at the end of the day, we're specific to a department called the NHBRC, which stands for the National Home Builders Registration Council. And the way that we started is that many people actually got stuck in the process of building their new home, and they struggled to move forward, stay within budget. They had some problems, and we jumped in, we helped them facilitate the process so that they get started as soon as possible and don't go too much over budget with unforeseen surprises and delays along the way. So what I do is I specialize in NHBRC, in getting those applications done, registering home builders and enrolling homes with the NHBRC. But along with that, there's many professionals involved, like your architects, your geotechnical engineers, civil and structural engineers, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So NHBRC, as I said, most clients don't even understand why you need NHBRC, what is the purpose of NHBRC, etc. But something that we're going to talk later on regarding NHBRC, why we need to have most of the houses, especially new built houses, to register with NHBRC. That's where you come in, guys, help clients to register their buildings and make sure that everything goes smoothly. But before we go to NHBRC, which is documentation, further to what we were talking about, they need to understand the professionals that we have. For example, like a QS, why do we need to have a QS on a project?
Look, I think a QS is important because a QS helps you with your contractual agreements with builders. So if you're building a big house, let's say for instance in a fancy estate, something like Steyn City, a multi-million rand house, it would be wise to have a QS, a quantity surveyor, because he will beforehand, he will review the costs and your budget, and he will then plan according to your budget, and through the construction process, he will monitor the cost to make sure that it stays within your budget and your feasibility. So I think that is very important to have a QS.
Yeah, it's more of understanding your budget, having control of your money. How much do you need to spend? How much, if it's borrowing, how much money do you need to borrow for you to execute the project and to finish the project? Because if you don't have a QS, and yes, I understand there are contractors that can actually give you a budget or two, of course, of your project. But as you say, depending on the complexity of the project, a QS is always good to have because you can actually literally budget and he controls your money. Money that you're going to spend is being spent wisely according to the budget. So we do get clients who ask, do we need to have a QS? Is it necessary for us to have a QS? Yes, there's a little bit of money that you're spending having that kind of professional. But with that money that you're putting in, you're saving a lot of tons of money because your project might go over budget. You might not realize that you're spending more. You just then realize that later on in the project that you'll find I'm over budget maybe by 200, 300, 400,000. But if you have someone that is controlling or way before on the planning stage of the project where they do costing, looking at your finishes, looking at your structural elements of it, together with the architectural drawings and also the geotech, all those kind of things. If you can budget from there, then you have a good, reasonable idea of how much you're going to spend. So QSing, yes, it's important, but then for QS to do its costing, you need architectural drawings. That's when an architect comes in. where the client describes what or the type of house that they need.
Yes, they've got their idea, they've got their lifestyle, they
Yeah.
know more or less what they want. So
Yeah.
sitting down with an architect, he will put your ideas and your lifestyle
Yeah.
onto paper, onto plan, design a house in accordance with that. And he'll do it according to the local guidelines as well.
Yeah.
And that is important because you need to get your plans approved. Firstly, you probably have to get it approved by your HOA of the
Right.
estate, the Homeowners Association. And then from there, it's got to go to the municipality in the area.
Yeah.
So if you get an architect that is up to date with the local guidelines, so I'd probably also get someone that is in the area.
Yes.
For instance, I had a house that we did in Marlow Park, which is in Mpumalanga, right next to the Kruger Park.
Yeah.
And we got someone from Gauteng to design the house, and he did a great job in designing what we wanted. But when it came to the municipality's guidelines,
Yeah.
we found that we had to go back and forth,
Yeah.
because he didn't comply with that municipality's guidelines.
Yeah.
So I think it is important to also get someone in the area who knows that municipality to design your home.
And further to that, basically I was saying someone who's familiar with the guidelines around that area. Was if you're not so familiar with that, it takes maybe months and months for you to get approved. But with that now, with architectural drawings, it's the same thing that we can talk about geotech, where we do understand that clients get excited with the estate if they want to buy a land. It's a beautiful estate, etc. I don't want to name a couple of estates that we've worked with. But when they are buying the land, they have no idea the type of soil that the site has. Some are quite expensive because it might be dolomite plus clay, or it's a clay area. Then
there might be seepage.
Exactly, we've got water table issues, water, and also so you have to put in geopipes, which is a cost to the client. You have to go probably for a foundation, which becomes a cost to the client. They are not aware of that. Because the couple of clients that I've worked with where we did engineering drawings, etc., then they realized, no, because it's quite high in terms of the foundations, they literally had to sell the stand. They didn't have an idea that you need this type of foundations. So making clients aware that it's okay to also ask local engineers around the area just to have an idea of the type of foundation that they're going to have, or probably if they're going to buy a stand that estate to get the geotech, appoint a structural engineer just to review the geotech and give them an idea of the type of foundation they're going to have, if there's a water issue, type of precaution measures that are going to be applied, which is a cost to the building, etc. So having that awareness, asking around, local engineers, getting a geotech from the estate, just reviewing, getting an engineer just to review the geotech, and then you make an informed decision from that. Than for you to buy and then realize later on that there's a huge cost in terms of the foundations that you need to apply.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like you said earlier, if you got seepage, for instance, you could have rising dam coming through your foundation.
Yeah.
So if the engineer hasn't got the geotech report or the report on the soil conditions, he can't plan for that, and you might have your house built with rising dam coming through. Also, certain soils move, so you could have huge cracks in your house. So that's why it's important to assess the soil conditions before the time. Another thing is also when you've got a house that is more than 2 levels, you definitely need to do a geotech report.
For sure.
You definitely need to do a geotech report for that. That's very important.
What's the loading that you're going to have on your foundation is quite extensive, etc.
Exactly.
But also the value of the project, 3-story, 4-story, you need to have a geotech because the cost implication, cost of geotech investigation versus repairing a 4-story building, it's quite expensive.
Exactly. And then also you've got your budget that you set out before the time.
Yeah.
Now I get a lot of clients who come to me, they've got a 3-story building. Now it's time to get to the last hurdle, go to NHBOC, get the project enrolled before you can pour your foundation.
Yeah.
And the NHBOC says, where's your geotech report?
Yeah.
Then you sit with a 3-week delay because you need to go and get a geotech report done. And then the engineer needs to update his designs in accordance with that before you can start building.
For sure.
So if you've got a 3-story house, make sure you do a geotech report.
What is quite interesting was what I know of, you can correct me if I'm wrong, NHBC, depending also with the estate of soil conditions, they need foundation designs, foundation drawings from the engineer for them to approve, etc., with your classification that we're putting on the document that you submit. Now, if they realize that we don't have a geotech, the engineer has done a design already, you have to do a geotech again, and probably the design that the engineer has done is quite different. There's a cost to the engineer and a cost to you in terms of delays that you're going to encounter in getting your document or house submitted.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it's something that a lot of clients should be aware of in terms of documentation that you need just to start construction. So having contractor again, that's when you get a contractor where a contractor not only does he have to be NHBRC registered, but he should be able experience actually to build CIDB grading, etc.
So I would say if you in certain areas in Gauteng, like Vereniging in Vanderbijl Park, local to us would be like Littleton Manor, Club View, Witfontein, which is around Benoni area. If you're on those areas, I would advise that if you're building in an estate or if you are purchasing a stand from someone, which is just in a normal residential area, try and find out if there has been a geotechnical investigation done. Because if you need to go and do one yourself, it could be a very costly exercise. If you're buying in an estate, usually there is a geotechnical investigation that has been done. And usually that is sufficient for, let's say, the NHBOC and for the engineer to do their designs. But when you're buying a plot, let's say in an older area like Littleton Manor, and there's no geotech done, and you want to go and build a house on there, you might find yourself spending between 60 and 120,000 Rand just on a geotech report. So also estate agents like to sell a place and say that you can easily subdivide, and on the second part you can build a new home. Make that purchase subject to a geotechnical investigation, or try and negotiate that off the purchase price, because you might find that you buy a property with an existing house, want to build at the back after the subdivision, but then you can't build because the soil condition is actually so bad that you can't build, especially in areas where there is dolomite. Very important to check that out.
Yes, make the client aware. So it's information that we need to give out there. Do your investigation, do your research way before you buy land. Get a geotech or get an engineer just to review the stand that you want to buy, and then you make an informed decision before you spend a lot of money on it. Because those are the cases that we are facing with clients, whether they have to sell later on or they are forced to build in a very small area, but they bought the stand for 2 or 3 or 4 million or something.
Yes, like you said, try to get the geotech beforehand, and then try and go see a civil and structural engineer like yourself and speak to him about the type of foundations that you need. Like we know, if you just need to do a normal strip footing foundation, that's much simpler, much cheaper as opposed to a raft foundation in a dolomite area.
With clay soils or something like that. That's quite interesting. So it's all about research. It's all about starting your project right from the beginning with professionals right to the end. You might think that there is a cost to it, having all those engineers or QSCs or basically the geotech investigation done on the land that time, but it will be worthwhile later on because you've got all your documentation, you've got all your information that you have, then you make an informed decision on that. You might spend a little bit, but it's better for you to spend less than 100,000 or 50,000 with professionals just to give you advice than to spend 2 million or 1.5 million on a stand that might be very difficult for you to build, or you may be forced to build in this very small area with that particular stand, because that information is not really readily available. It's about you as the client, end user, to be responsible and asking about
nobody tells you this when you buy the stand. I mean, someone just wants to get the sale through. I had a case where a client, he bought a stand with an existing foundation. He was very excited because he thought he's going to save some money on the foundations. He can just do the top structure from there. Very excited. It's going to be a good turnaround on his money. And they said that he's got an NHBOC enrollment certificate, plans have been approved, etc., etc. He bought the stand. When he wanted to start building, we found out it was, for instance, never enrolled with the NHBOC. He had to then go and rip out their whole foundation, which cost him all the demolition costs. And right now he's only breaking even on the project. And plus the time delay. Now it took him 4 weeks to get to that decision between weighing up which is going to be more cost effective and then executing the whole demolition. He told me he spent something like 180,000 Rand extra on that stand because not all the right things were in place as promised by the salesperson. So check it out beforehand.
It's fine. So that's why professionals are there. Again, NHBRC is there because of kind of reasons. But having an engineer and a QS or probably an architect, ask them, let's investigate, let's find out what needs to be done, and then we make an informed decision. That's one thing that I will always emphasize to our clients, because we do get this kind
Use
of
professionals. Use professionals.
Use professionals. Yes, you might say you're spending, but it's going to be worthwhile at the end of the project. Small project, medium project, even a high end, still you need all those documentation, you need you need that information for you to make an informed decision and understand your budget as you are going on with your project. I know we talked about architects and geologists and case, but engineers, that's a profession sometimes that is overlooked somehow with some of the clients
Yes,
that we work
it's
with.
quite strange. I've had actually people come to me now, where we work with NHBOC, literally the last hurdle before you can pour concrete in your foundation.
Yeah.
And then a person would come to me and say, do I need an engineer?
Yeah.
And I think to myself, how have you got to this point without an engineer?
That's it.
Engineer is important. I mean, your architect designs your house according to the ideas and the lifestyle that you have. You've got all the costing data, etc.
Yeah.
But the engineer needs to make sure that that house is going to be sturdy,
So
that you don't have cracks in your house.
That's it.
He's going to, like we talked about earlier, he's going to check the soil condition and design a foundation in accordance with it.
Yeah.
He's going to design a first floor slab in accordance with it, a roof in accordance with it, so that you don't have major cracks in your house, so that you do not have rising damp issues in your house.
Yeah, basically putting responsibility. There should be someone who's responsible in terms of the structural integrity of the building. Because I think one of the things that a lot of clients or some clients look at is the architectural drawings is done, and then there is a strip footing there. Yeah, most architects, they say you refer to engineers detail for that, but they look at it and say, fine, I think that's enough. I mean, I need that. Let me just get a builder to cost. They start doing excavations. What is the width? What is the depth? Let's just use the drawings, the drawings that we're seeing on the architectural drawing. Overseeing, not looking at ways to engineer specifications, and then they go ahead. Then later on, realizing the inspector comes and say, fine, is the engineer inspected your foundations? Or if you want to register with NHBRC, you've got the engineer registered with NHBRC who's going to sign off. No, it's not there. Amazed. Why? Then why do we need an engineer? So I think making clients aware that it's not about a consultant spending more money on your project, but it's a consultant taking responsibility of the integrity of the building, responsibility of your foundations, the slabs, and the stuff. Whereas the professional needs to come for inspections of foundations, these double-story slabs, roof, and sign off. Using science documentation, taking responsibility of the structure, working with the contractor and working with the architect. Because not only do you work on the designs, but you have to use the architectural drawings to work on the designs, and then go to site, have a conversation with the contractor, make sure the contractor is constructing according to architectural plus structural. If you need reinforcement, they put in the right reinforcement so that the foundation is steady, it's not deflecting, it's not moving. If it's surface bed, they put in mesh, they put in DPC, etc. All those structural elements should be signed off by a structural engineer, making sure that the house is steady, it works well, you've got enough brick force, you've got enough lintels to avoid all those kind of cracks, etc. So an engineer is more of responsibility of the integrity of the structure, making sure that it works well, it's not going to deflect, it's not going to move, and the contractor is done according to his engineering drawings. Obviously, the architectural drawings needs to comply with the contractor is building. So making aware that engineers need to be part and parcel of your cost analysis or budget, because there's a fees of an engineer. And then the material that you're going to use, that is spec by the engineer, should be part and parcel of the bill of quantity, where the QS comes in and builds or gives you a budget of the project. Architectural with your finishes, that we understand, nice tiles, nice sink. I know a lot of clients love that. But now in terms of reinforcement, in terms of mesh, brick force, and those kind of things, those are the specs that comes from an engineering drawing that the QS is going to use for costing. Then you get a full budget of your project. And then you've got all those professionals going to assist you from construction, building, okay, registration also, right through to completion. And when it's completed, the engineer needs, with electrical, if I'm not mistaken, needs to give you a completion certificate, a COC electrical, saying everything is done, we're happy. And that's the same document you're going to give to council for them to give you an occupational certificate. That's where they come in, they say, fine, for you to be in there, do you have an engineer?
Where's your foundation certificate?
Yes.
Where's the structural certificate?
And everything, all those documentation needs to be in place. So they are, these institutes are not there to spend your money. They are there to protect you at the end of the day, the end user. But some wants to run away from those institutions. But at the end of the day, you are not protected. They are putting in all those measures or quality management systems to make sure that whoever is staying in the house is done by a competent person and decided.
So it mitigates your risk at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And let's say something does go wrong, at least you can go back to someone to have it remedied. If you issue all your certificates and things are going wrong, there could have been a flaw in your design, but you've got professional indemnity to cover you against things like that.
Yes.
And an owner can go after that.
Yeah.
So things like that also protect them in a worst case scenario.
For sure. I think most clients might not understand what is PI, which is professional indemnity. It's like buying a car and you have insurance. And if something happens to the car, the insurance probably will cover your expenses to repair it, etc. It's the same thing that your builder and your engineer needs to have a PI, which is professional indemnity insurance, just in case if anything happens, structural elements moves, the contractor doesn't build according to the architectural structural, that cost is covered by their insurances, not by you, the client, but by the professional insurances. That's the reason why you need to have professionals who are registered with NHBSC, who've got professional indemnity, registered with the Engineering Council of South Africa, and stuck up with the architects. Just in case if that happens, you are protected as the end user.
So generally, if you're looking for a good engineer, a good thing will be to check, does he have professional indemnity? And another thing would be to check if he's registered with institutions like EXA or SASA. That's more for the geotechnical engineers.
It's all more for information to building, but what's important also is NHBSC.
NHBSC barcode stickers.
Backwards.
If you've got NHBSC barcode stickers, you know this guy knows the process.
Yes.
And he can be held liable by the NHBSC as well.
For sure. That's the thing. So most guys, they might not be registered with NHBSC. It becomes a problem when you want to register your house with the NHBSC. With NHBSC, it's more of again regulations, more of science documentation. It's more about the building, what you need to do when you're building. So someone who's registered with them, is under them, understands what NHBSC is, what are the recommendations that you need to apply when you're building, taking responsibility of the work that is done on site.
Yes, remember, if your engineer's got NHBSC barcodes, it means that he knows what the NHBSC's standards and precautionary measures are that they set beforehand.
Yes.
So that should usually mean that by the time you do an NHBSC enrollment, most of the engineers' designs are already up to spec with what it should be, with what a regulating authority like the NHBSC has set. So it means that your things should be up to scratch.
For sure. And we shouldn't forget electrical engineers also who come in, bring on your electrical conduits. They need to give you a certificate at the end of the project, together with a structural certificate for occupation, making sure that they have done the right thing, everything has been signed off, and then that's when the council comes in and says, municipality, we are happy with everything, with the documentation that we have been provided by your professionals. We can give you an occupation for you to stay in the house.
Yes.
So it's a broad, it sounds as if there's a lot of professions that you need to put in there. And it might seem that it might be complicated for other clients. That's when a project manager comes in, where you might say you might not have the time or the understanding and all those kind of things, or monitor the work that, or depending on the project, monitor the work that needs to be done on site. Then you have to hire probably a project manager who's going to manage your project. All consultants will be working under him or reporting to him, from the QS, from the contractor, structural engineers, etc., etc. So they report to him, and then the project manager reports to you in terms of program of works, where we are, budget-wise, are they doing well, etc. Someone just monitoring, making sure that every service provider is doing what it's supposed to do, and then he reports to the client. So having a project manager, depending on the complexity of the project, etc., it's always a good thing to have if you don't have the time. Because if you don't have the time, if you're not there, how are you going to monitor quality of work? You're not really necessarily looking at quality of work, but monitoring just to understand what's happening with the project. Are you still paying in terms of budget, etc., even though there's a QS, etc. But having a project manager with the complexity of the project is always good to have.
I agree with you. I mean, a project manager is going to make sure that you stay within your planned time frame. And is also going to help you look after your budget, that you stay within that budget. Like you said, most people who build homes normal homeowners, they've got full-time jobs, they're occupied with other things, and they're not a specialist in building a home.
Yeah.
So if you've got a project manager who can take care of these things for you, coordinate between engineers and QSs and all these professionals, and just report back to you, that's going to take a lot of stress off of you as the homeowner. I think especially if you're doing it for the first time, a project manager, I think, is going to be a huge aid to you and take a lot of stress off.
For sure. And then you learn from that. Then next project probably you'll be using your consultants as guys will be just monitoring the quality of work. That's quite interesting in terms of if you really want to build a house. There's a lot of avenues. It's not a lot of avenues, a couple of avenues that you need to really look at. But one thing that I'm still coming back to, what is important as we conclude this topic is, before you buy land, ask in terms of professionals that are around the experience with geotech investigation, or get a geotech from the estate, get an engineer just to review the geotech in terms of the foundation that you might need to have. And then you go to an architect in terms of the designs that you have. Understand what you're buying. Understand what you need for you to complete your project. What are the services or professionals that you need? What can you, even before you buy, if you've got guys that are close by, or friends, QSs or something, ask, is it okay to buy this land in this particular estate? Are there any problems, etc.? Not really problems, but are there any mitigation measures or precaution measures that I need to apply that will increase my cost? It might be a lifestyle that you're looking for, which is okay. Say, fine, we'll put in all those precaution measures, make sure that it works, but I like the estate, which is still okay, but you need to be aware of how much money you're going to spend depending on the type of soil that we have, etc., etc. So having a good land surveyor and QSing, geotech investigation, having an engineer, obviously an architect in terms of drawing, and probably last, having a good contractor. It's avenues or professionals that you need to be understand that you need to have in the project.
And if you're looking for a building contractor, make sure the building contractor has got an NHBRC registration certificate.
What are the problems that you face with guys that are not contractors without NHBRC?
I found that people get a contractor, now they want to start building, they need to do an NHBRC enrollment with a house, and now they can't do it, or it has never been done, and then they get stopped on site.
Yeah.
So I want to say two very important things before you start construction, before you pour concrete in your foundation, should be to make sure that your plans have been approved by the municipality. And the second item is make sure you've got an NHBRC enrollment certificate for your home.
Before you build.
If you do, before you start construction, if you've got those two, then you should have peace of mind to a relative degree that the professionals have done their work, and that compliance has been met.
Correct.
So I think those are very important. Approved plans, NHBRC enrollment certificate for your home before you pour concrete.
Yes, one of the things that we're going to discuss, if you pour concrete without an NHBRC, what are the implications? What are the penalties that you're going to have? Will you be able to get your house registered, or will you be able to get an occupational certificate, etc., etc.? So one of the topics we're going to talk on the second part of this podcast. I know a lot of people have been asking, what is NHBRC? Why do you need to have NHBRC? It's sort of like they might know that you need an engineer, obviously an architect and contractor, but NHBRC, where they come
from. A lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah.
They get a surprise. When they want to sell their house, they can't sell. When they want to get a bond, they can't get a bond.
Yes.
Or they start construction, they get stopped on site.
Yes. Yes.
And we'll touch on that.
We need to touch on that just to give information to them. But thank you so much for this. I think our clients are aware of the professionals that they need to have, and do ask before you buy land or before you start construction. Make sure that you've got the right professionals with you, and then you start your construction. Then with the right professionals, hopefully with the right professionals, it will be easy project for you to complete on the right time, with the right budget, with the right quality. I hope you've been informed with this discussion that we have. As I said, this was our first podcast or first video for DNA Associates in Centurion. That's where we are in our offices. We're going to continue doing this to our public, our clients, just to give information, just to make sure that you are aware of the regulations that you need in terms of building and structuring the built environment, the type of professionals that you have, documentation that is required by you as the owner, and also the professionals. I know it has been a long time coming. A lot of clients have been talking about let's have videos, let's have information that you can put out there. So this is us. This is what we're going to do. Thank you so much, Lincoln, for coming
Thank
here
you.
and discussing about the professionals that we need. I know we're going to be talking more on HBRC and other aspects of built environment. We've worked together for a long time. We work together basically because you're an engineer and all those kind of things in terms of NHBRC registration. So thank you for coming. Thank you for attending on our first video or podcast. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll appreciate it. Thank you, viewers.